I would really hope that by now all of us around this channel know who Steven Wilson is, but in case you don't know, and this is going to be a huge eye-opening moment for you in your life, Steven Wilson, of course, was the founder and the leader of Porcupine Tree up until a couple of years ago, whenever he decided to kind of put Porcupine Tree a little bit on the back burner in order to focus a little bit more on his solo career. And the result of that has been now 3 albums, with the one I'm about to talk about today being the third. Insurgencies and Grace for Drowning. Grace for Drowning coming in 2011. Now, if you guys don't remember that review, well, go back and listen to it, and you'll learn a little bit more about Steven Wilson. But here, for his new album, The Raven That Refused to Sing and Other Stories, Steven decided to mess with the formula a little bit by hiring someone else to handle the engineering. And usually whenever that happens, usually whenever you have a little bit of a shift-up in the booth, that can sometimes draw out some red flags and sometimes make you a little bit worried, because let's face it, sometimes if it ain't broke, don't fix it. With Bob Rock and Metallica, it definitely was becoming very broke, so they fixed it with Rick Rubin, which only fixed it minorly. They really should have stuck with Fleming Rasmussen with that one, but we're not here to talk about that. In the engineering department, who does he get? ALAN Parsons. If you don't know ALAN Parsons, you do know ALAN Parsons, and you just don't realize it. Listen to Dark Side of the Moon. If you listen to Dark Side of the Moon, ALAN Parsons was responsible for the engineering of that album. Not to mention his group, the ALAN Parsons Project, was able to bring many, many different classic books and classic ideas to life in the form of music, such as I, Robot and The Time Machine. So yeah, this is actually like a progressive rock or progressive metal fan's freaking double nerdgasm all in one video. So yeah, this was actually awesome. Wow. The first time that I knew that this was going to happen, whenever I read that this was who he had selected, this was probably a good representation of my face. Yeah, I was so happy I practically pissed myself. So let's talk about the album itself. It's only 6 tracks long, but if you remember Grace for Drowning, that was a double album that probably didn't span any more than 9 tracks. So we know that Steven Wilson is definitely a fan of longer experimental compositions, which is something that's definitely apparent on this record. We have 3 songs that clock in at longer than 10 minutes and 3 that don't. And what's nice about this is right from the get-go, the 3 songs that are over 10 minutes are kind of blocked in by the 3 that are not. So track 1 is 10 minutes or longer, track 2 is not, track 3 is 10 minutes or longer, track 4 is not, and etc., going on throughout the entire breadth of the album. Right from the start, you're hit with the longest track on the affair, which is 12 minutes and 10 seconds long, Luminol. And really the one thing I'm going to say, kind of individually for both of the different formats, is that the longer songs, take your favorite long-winded Porcupine Tree or Steven Wilson regarded epic, and kind of infuse a similar formula, only not as well defined as far as the sub-movements or whatever that are a part of it. For example, if you take a look at Fear of a Blank Planet with Anesthetize, there's 3 separate movements that you can chronicle on that song. Now, that's not something that happens on these tracks, however, you can definitely have that same feel to it, because there are some certain rests where the idea either shifts a little bit, or is just simply used as a musical pause, and that's something that kind of gives you a little bit of a break. Holy mother of a shit, let me tell you one thing that this album definitely has. It's a lot of power musically. And the power is in his ability to really control the atmosphere. Now, Steven Wilson himself has kind of described this album as an album that's full of the theme of the supernatural. And a lot of different ghost stories and the like are going to be infused in the 125-page booklet that you're going to get if you get the 4-disc deluxe edition, which has everything from a Blu-ray to instrumental to 5.1 stereo mixes or surround sound mixes along with it. So, damn, there's a lot of different ways that you can really experience this album if you pick that up, but the book definitely sounds like the most interesting aspect about it. Not to say that music is definitely bad, because the music is exceptional. Out of all the albums that I've heard so far this year, the one thing that's really been lacking is a progressive metal or a progressive rock album that really has kind of stripped things down a little bit and really gone for that whole idea that a lot of people enjoy, which is simplicity, only finding a lot of beauty in it. And Steven Wilson's always been a man who has a lot of power and dictation over that. He definitely is able to take simplistic ideas that you could almost hear in pop songs of the past or the present. In The Raven That Refused to Sing, I almost got kind of like a Beatles-esque vibe to it, which was really kind of a cool experience. And really, by kind of tweaking with the atmosphere a little bit and throwing in a couple of those odd signatures, throwing in some wind instruments, throwing in a mini Moog or a Hammond organ, really is able to build something spectacular. And that's exactly what he's been able to do for all 6 of these tracks. There's a lot of power and a lot of passion in here, and the beauty is the one thing that's interwoven. The Raven That Refused to Sing, I know I just mentioned it, but I'm going to mention it again, has a lot of that kind of heartbreaking, like passionate, powerful music within it, where, you kind of get the breadth of this idea that he really, really wants this, animal or this person, whatever it's supposed to be, real or metaphor, to really utter a noise. And the music that's behind it really sets the pace of the beauty of music, not to mention the beauty of hearing the sound. In a song such as Drive Home, you kind of get that same idea, only it's done with such a chilled out atmosphere that it reminds you a lot of Steven Wilson's work from the past, all the way back to the early parts of the 1990s, and his side ventures such as No Man or the incredible Expanding Mindfuck. There's definitely a lot of allegories that can be driven in, and a lot of different comparisons that could be made. I think really where this album speaks in its most volumes are on those 2 tracks, which happen to be a couple of the shorter tracks. The longer tracks, though, are able to build atmosphere, not to mention build it with layers. They're able to really throw a lot of different ideas in there. And I really have to praise, not to mention the production, but also the engineering job of Alan Parsons. He has definitely made this album feel just as big, and as it's really appropriately should be made to feel as big as. That's a long sentence, but the reason why he had to kind of do this and kind of make this a very, scripted, but at the same time very, I guess, very, grown from the ground up process is because that's kind of how Steven Wilson approaches his music. He's always been the type of person that loves experimenting with sound. He's somebody that doesn't necessarily embrace a very conventional style of music. He's loved the psychedelic. He's loved krautrock. He's loved, conventional pop structures, progressive metal, progressive rock. You name it, this guy has probably either tinkered with it or has kind of gotten a really, really large amount of respect for it. And his engineering and his own production ventures have definitely proven that. Musically, though, this is one heck of a experience. This is a process that, it's going to be only 6 tracks and longer than, most albums that have 12 or 13 and are nothing but chugga chugga chugga. But this album doesn't need to be chugga chugga chugga. With prog rock, you definitely have a lot more freedom and a lot more of a ground that you can tread to really experiment with ambience, to experiment with atmospheres, to experiment with, a plethora of different instruments, and you can just kind of take the composition where it feels like it should go. That's what it kind of feels like happens here. It feels like these compositions grew very organically out of something very simple and then just built and expanded themselves into something just grand and majestic. And that's why Steven Wilson continuously is able to dictate the emotion of his music while also having it retain that organic feeling that constantly seems right there. The only thing that feels synthetic is in the fact that the production and the engineering has bound all these ideas together, and man, have they done a splendid job with that. Interlinking all of these ideas can seem like a really, really burdensome task, almost impossible. However, with the help of Alan Parsons, they were able to do it, and man, oh man, the finished product sounds incredible. So, how about a score for this album? I don't consider this quite the perfect 10, absolutely not, but I think a solid 9 is definitely deserving of this record. It has got a lot of feeling behind it, the emotions definitely bleed through the music, and you just kind of feel everything that goes along. While this is something that's going to be accompanied with a lot of ghost stories, you don't necessarily get a very haunted vibe from it most cases, or most of the time. However, the atmospheres that surround sometimes do have that pervading, that kind of foreboding atmosphere to it. Either that, or one that kind of turns you a little bit more emotional than you kind of would like to be. It kind of takes you out of your comfort zone. That's where it kind of gets you as a little bit, disconcerting. It's not like Storm Corrosion, where it definitely was just disturbing music. So that you can't exactly say that he's retained and kind of reusing a lot of the ideas from those sessions with McAlligraphy from Opeth. I would definitely give this a strong, solid 9, and I would recommend everybody to pick up this album whenever it comes out later here in February. Do what I'm doing. Pre-order the vinyl. I think that's going to be the best experience. Imagine this on even better sounding quality as opposed to just what you can hear right now on the internet. Yeah, it's going to be that damn good. So Steve, I've always been a fan of your work, so Somebody might call me a fanboy, but fuck them. It's true, though, that Steven Wilson, you are definitely one of the best modern musicians out there, and you've definitely proven it once again with this album right here. Fans, you should definitely check this out. Whether you're a fan of Steven Wilson, Porcupine Tree or not, give this album a chance, because it's definitely one for the ages, definitely one that you're going to respect, and definitely one of the best albums that I've heard so far here in 2013. Take care.